In the bustling streets of a medieval town, where the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and the occasional waft of something far less pleasant, a rather peculiar ritual unfolded daily. Picture this. Noble ladies and gents in their finest attire, strutting about with an air of dignity. Yet all too often, their next stop was the nearest garderobe. This wasn't just a quaint little toilet room. It was a throne of sorts, albeit one with a view that could be hazardous to innocent passers-by below. Our tale begins with Sir Cedric the Clumsy, a squire whose aspirations of knighthood were often thwarted by his own 2 left feet and a tendency to startle at the faintest sound. One fateful afternoon, while practicing his swordsmanship outside the castle, he felt a familiar rumble in his stomach, an ominous sign that the hearty stew he had devoured earlier was staging a rebellion. With a sheepish grin, he made a beeline for the castle's garderobe. Inside, he found himself face to face with Brother Benedict, a monk prone to digestive dilemmas. "Ah, Cedric. Do you seek enlightenment or simply relief?" Brother Benedict joked, shifting uncomfortably on the makeshift seat. With the lack of any door, privacy was a luxury few could afford, and the 2 men exchanged awkward glances as they navigated the ancient system of waste disposal. As Cedric settled in, he heard the noble Lady Gwendolyn's voice drifting in from the courtyard. "I shall toss this chamber pot out the window. It's a fine day for a bit of fresh air." In a moment of horror, Cedric realized he was directly beneath her window. With a sudden panic, he bolted upright, but not before a catastrophic collision with Brother Benedict, who, in true monk fashion, had taken a vow of silence that day, only to be broken by a series of gasps and squeals. What ensued was a comical scene of flailing limbs, startled cries, and a chamber pot that seemed determined to defy gravity. As the contents of the pot soared through the air, Cedric ducked just in time, while Brother Benedict's shouts of "Holy moly!" echoed off the stone walls, creating a cacophony that would surely make the townsfolk pause mid-bargain. In that moment, they were united in their shared embarrassment, a brotherhood forged in the most unfortunate of circumstances. Thus, the medieval experience of using the toilet was not just a matter of necessity. It was a blend of humor, chaos, and a reminder that even in the darkest corners of history, laughter was the best sanitation. A stinky situation in the Middle Ages. Ah, the Middle Ages. A time of chivalry, grand castles, and noble knights. But let us not forget the less than pleasant realities that came with this picturesque era. While tales of gallant deeds and courtly love fill the pages of history, one could argue that the true hero of the medieval period was none other than the humble toilet. Or rather, the utter lack thereof. Picture this. A bustling castle, echoing with laughter and the clanging of swords, where the noble lords and ladies feast, dance, and recite poetry. All while their waste carelessly piles up in the corners, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to make a misstep. In this delightful tale, we shall delve into the peculiar practices of medieval sanitation, where tossing poop out the window was not simply an act of negligence but a rather common disposal method. Meet Sir Cedric, a rather clumsy squire with a penchant for misadventure, and Brother Benedict, a monk whose digestive issues are rivaled only by his propensity for philosophical musings. Together, they'll navigate the treacherous waters of medieval hygiene, all while dealing with the whims of a particularly nosy noble lady named Lady Gertrude, who seems to have an uncanny ability to appear at the most inopportune moments. As dawn broke over Castle Stinkmore, Sir Cedric found himself in a predicament. Having consumed what he thought was a hearty stew the night before, he now felt the unmistakable churnings of his stomach. "Blast it," he muttered, clutching his belly. With the urgency of a knight charging into battle, he sprinted toward the garderobe, a fancy term for a medieval toilet, but one that offered little comfort and even less privacy. It was essentially a wooden seat perched over a deep pit, where one could conduct their business while being serenaded by the laughter of those outside. As Cedric flung open the door, he was met not with solace, but rather the piercing gaze of Lady Gertrude, who was inspecting the chamber pot with an air of authority. "Sir Cedric, what brings you here at such an early hour?" she exclaimed, raising an eyebrow. "Ah, Lady Gertrude. I was merely checking the structural integrity of the garderobe," he stammered, trying to mask his desperation. "Structural integrity?" she echoed, clearly unimpressed. "This is not a castle wall, dear squire. This is where we dispose of, well, you know." Her nose crinkled in distaste as she gestured to the chamber pot overflowing with yesterday's remnants. Cedric felt his cheeks redden as he sidestepped her gaze, wishing he could simply leap out the window, a common practice for those who wished to rid themselves of waste, though not exactly advisable for one's health, or the unsuspecting passerby below. Meanwhile, Brother Benedict shuffled down the corridor, clutching his own chamber pot with an urgency that rivaled Cedric's. "Excuse me, my lady. I must deliver this to the—" But before he could finish, a loud crash echoed through the hall. Cedric's foot had found a particularly unyielding stone, sending him sprawling into the wall, which in turn caused Lady Gertrude to drop her prized pot. "Oh, for the love of all that is holy!" she shrieked, as the contents of both pots merged in an unholy union on the floor. With chaos reigning supreme, Cedric and Benedict exchanged horrified glances. "I think it's time we reevaluate our sanitation practices," Benedict mused, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity amidst the disaster. "Agreed," Cedric replied, still grappling with the reality of his clumsiness. "Perhaps we should consider an outdoor toilet. Or at least a sturdy door that locks." As the two men began to clean up the mess, they couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of their situation. After all, in a world where knights fought dragons and ladies swooned over ballads, it was the everyday challenges, like using a toilet without inciting a scandal, that truly defined the medieval experience. And thus, as the sun rose higher in the sky, so too did the laughter echoing through Castle Stinkmore, reminding all that sometimes, even in the stinkiest of situations, a good sense of humor is the best sanitation practice of all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the ramshackle castle, Sir Cedric the Clumsy found himself in a predicament most dire. With his stomach churning like a wild steed after last night's feast, he dashed toward the garderobe, a creaky structure perched precariously over the castle's moat, a design that was both ingenious and terrifying. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of desperation. Cedric stumbled upon Brother Benedict, a monk whose digestive woes were the stuff of legend. "Ah, Cedric. Mind the chamber pot," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with alarm, just as Cedric's foot caught on the edge of the very pot he was warned about. With a graceless flail, he sent the contents of both pots soaring through the air, landing with an unceremonious splat on Lady Gertrude, who had entered with the determination of a hawk eyeing its prey. "By the saints!" she shrieked, her noble gown now a canvas of chaos. "Have you lost your senses, Sir Cedric?" "Madam, it appears I've lost much more than that," he stammered, mortified yet unable to suppress a laugh at the absurdity of it all. As the trio stood amidst the carnage, laughter erupted, echoing off the stone walls. In that moment of mayhem, they realized that while their sanitation methods may have been lacking, their ability to laugh at life's little misfortunes was truly unparalleled. And so, amidst the remnants of their haphazard attempts at hygiene, they forged an unexpected bond. One that would be remembered long after the echoes of laughter faded, leaving behind a lesson as timeless as the castle itself. Sometimes, all you need is a good laugh, even when life, and the garderobe, seems to throw you into a mess. The throne of the unwashed. The garderobe. The throne of the unwashed. In the medieval kingdom of Puddleton, where knights gallantly jousted and fair maidens danced, there existed an unsung hero of hygiene, the garderobe. This quaint little contraption, which could be best described as a throne of unwashed souls, was perched precariously over an open pit, and served as the primary means of relieving oneself. Alas, the charm of castles and gallantry often masked the revolting realities of medieval sanitation. It was a particularly drizzly Tuesday when Sir Clumsy, a squire with a penchant for misadventure and a stomach that often betrayed him, found himself in dire need of the garderobe. The noble halls of Puddleton Castle echoed with the laughter of lords and ladies feasting on roasted meats and honeyed pastries, while Sir Clumsy stood, sweat beading on his brow, contemplating his impending doom. "Why'd I always wait too long?" he muttered, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. He had heard tales of the dread that awaited those who dared to delay their visit to the throne. The last unfortunate soul to ignore the call of nature, a rather rotund knight, had been forced to make quite an impression, literally, when he burst forth from the garderobe in a fit of panic, causing a chain reaction of chaos and spilled mead. With determination, Sir Clumsy waddled through the castle, dodging curious nobles who were far too interested in his plight. Lady Beatrice, a nosy noble with an insatiable curiosity, peered through the door just as he was about to enter the garderobe. "Oh, Sir Clumsy. Are you off to conquer the dragon?" she inquired, her eyebrow raised in mockery. Yes. The dragon of, digestion," he stammered, hoping his excuse would suffice as he slipped inside. The garderobe was a cramped affair, a wooden bench with a hole carved out, overlooking a rather deep pit that served as the castle's waste disposal system. The stench was nothing short of legendary, a blend of rotting vegetables and the remnants of last week's banquet. As he settled down, a sudden jolt shook the castle. It was the sound of the drawbridge slamming shut, and Sir Clumsy realized he was not alone. Friar Fumble, the monastery's resident monk with digestive issues, had chosen the same moment to embrace the call of nature. "Oh dear," the friar gasped. "I hope this isn't a sign of divine retribution." "Better than divine constipation," Sir Clumsy quipped, trying to lighten the mood as the two men shared an uncomfortable silence, punctuated only by their respective groans and the occasional rumble from Sir Clumsy's belly. Just then, a loud crash echoed from above. It seemed someone, most likely Lady Beatrice, had taken it upon herself to inquire about the state of the garderobe. In her excitement, she had leaned too far over the edge of the window, and with a yelp, she tumbled forward, arms flailing, landing right in the pit that Sir Clumsy and Friar Fumble were precariously perched over. "What in the name of all that is holy?" cried Friar Fumble, clutching his stomach as he nearly toppled off the bench in shock. "Lady Beatrice, is that you?" Sir Clumsy gasped, trying to maintain his composure amidst the chaos. "You really shouldn't drop in unannounced." As Lady Beatrice clambered out of the pit, her face a mixture of horror and indignation, she exclaimed, "This is an absolute travesty. I demand a proper toilet for the nobility." "Ah, but my lady," Sir Clumsy replied, struggling not to laugh, "this is the height of medieval luxury. At least you were given a warm welcome." As the three of them exited the garderobe, one slightly more fragrant than the others, their laughter echoed through the castle halls, proving that even in a time of unspeakable hygiene, camaraderie and humor could prevail over the most unfortunate of situations. Thus, the tales of the Puddleton garderobe grew, forever immortalized as a reminder that while knights may battle dragons, it was the battle against nature's call that truly united them, preferably with a window firmly shut. As the sun dipped behind the crumbling towers of Castle Blunderbuss, Sir Cedric the Clumsy found himself in a precarious predicament. His stomach gurgled ominously, a reminder of the lavish feast he'd indulged in, complete with a rather questionable stew that had been prepared by the castle's cook, Old Grumble. Clutching his belly, Cedric dashed toward the garderobe, the medieval toilet, a quaint little nook that promised relief but came with its own set of challenges. Just as he flung the door open, he collided spectacularly with Brother Benedict, the ever-nervous monk who had been lurking nearby, likely contemplating his own digestive tribulations. by the saints. Cedric, what are you doing? Benedict squeaked, clutching his rosary as if it could ward off the impending disaster. With a yelp, Cedric stumbled backward, his foot slipping on a particularly ominous patch of muck that had missed the garderobe entirely, courtesy of the castle's infamous waste disposal system. Namely, tossing waste out the window. In a comical twist, a chamber pot landed not far from them, sending a cascade of refuse splashing in all directions. At that very moment, Lady Gertrude, the castle's notoriously judgmental noblewoman, strolled by, her nose held high in disdain. Unbeknownst to her, she was about to become an unwitting participant in this slapstick saga. Just as she began to comment on the castle's unfitting hygiene, a rogue bucket of waste, miscalculated by the castle's errant servant, soared through the air and, splat, decorated her elegant gown with a rather unpleasant pattern. Chaos erupted. Cedric, now doubled over in laughter and embarrassment, pointed at the flustered Lady Gertrude, while Brother Benedict, torn between helping the lady and fleeing the scene, opted for a hasty retreat, only to trip over the very chamber pot they had narrowly avoided moments before. In the aftermath, as laughter echoed through the castle halls, the noblewoman, despite her initial horror, couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. It was moments like these, filled with clumsy mishaps and unexpected camaraderie, that reminded everyone, even in the most dire of circumstances, a good laugh was the best remedy for the trials of medieval life. And so, amidst the cheerful chaos, they learned a valuable lesson. When faced with the unpleasantness of a medieval toilet, a sense of humor was truly the finest sanitation. The original portable toilets. In the medieval kingdom of Puddleton, where knights valiantly fought for glory and maidens twirled in flowing gowns, the true battles often waged behind closed doors. Or rather, behind slightly ajar windows. Indeed, in this quaint kingdom, the art of sanitation was as sophisticated as a drunken jester's dance. Enter the world of chamber pots, the original portable toilets, where the noble and the peasant alike faced the great equalizer, nature's call. It was a damp Tuesday morning when Sir Reginald, a rather stout knight with a penchant for overly spicy lentil stew, found himself in quite the predicament. Clad in rusting armor, he waddled into the great hall, clutching a well-worn chamber pot like a prized trophy. "Noble lords and ladies," he proclaimed, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who had just consumed his body weight in beans, "I must urgently seek the garderobe." Lady Gertrude, a nosy noblewoman with an uncanny ability to sniff out scandal, perked up at the sound of garderobe. "Oh, Sir Reginald, you simply must use the new one by the tower. It has a lovely view of the garden," she chimed, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Little did she know, the view often included the unfortunate sight of chamber pots being tossed out of windows, a popular pastime for the residents of Puddleton. With little time to waste, Sir Reginald made a beeline for the garderobe, a glorified hole in the wall that hung precariously over the castle's outer wall. As he scrambled up the winding stairs, his squire, a gangly lad named Hubert, tripped over his own feet, sending a stream of freshly polished armor clattering down the stairs. "Watch out for the—" Reginald began but was cut short by a loud crash as Hubert collided with a nearby tapestry, sending it fluttering down like a flag of surrender. The two of them finally burst into the garderobe, only to find Brother Alaric, a monk with a notorious reputation for his digestive troubles, sitting there with a look of serene contemplation. "Ah, Sir Reginald. What brings you to my humble throne?" he asked, blissfully unaware of the knight's urgent dilemma. "Brother Alaric. This is hardly the time for chit-chat." Reginald started, but the monk interrupted. "I must say, the lentil stew from the feast was rather potent, wasn't it? It's like a symphony of beans playing a raucous tune within." "Quite so, but I don't have time for your culinary critiques," Reginald exclaimed, his face turning a shade of crimson that rivaled the finest Puddleton wines. "I need to relieve myself." Thinking quickly, Brother Alaric waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, just use the chamber pot in the corner. It's only half full." With a grimace, Sir Reginald glanced at the chamber pot, which was indeed half filled with the remnants of previous users. Let's call it offerings. He sighed, resigned to the realities of medieval hygiene. Just as he was about to take action, a loud thud echoed from below. Peering out the window, he spotted Lady Gertrude, now in the midst of a spirited conversation with a passing farmer, oblivious to the chamber pot being launched from above. With a mighty heave, Hubert, still flustered from his earlier tumble, tried to balance the pot in his hands. Sir Reginald, I think I might have miscalculated the trajectory," he stammered, his eyes wide with panic. "Don't you dare." Reginald barked, but it was too late. The pot flew from Hubert's grasp, soaring through the air like an ill-fated catapult project. Time seemed to slow as the chamber pot arced gracefully through the sky, a testament to the kingdom's poor sanitation practices. The impact was as loud as the clang of a knight's armor, and chaos erupted below. Lady Gertrude shrieked and ducked, while the farmer, now dripping with the remnants of chamber pot contents, stood gaping in disbelief. "Oh dear," Brother Alaric muttered. "That's one way to spread the love of the Lord." And so it was that in the kingdom of Puddleton, where knights and nobles navigated the trials of courtly life, the greatest challenge often lay not in jousting or romance, but rather in the comical calamities of chamberpots and the timeless dance of hygiene. For in the end, everyone learned that when it came to medieval toilets, the only thing truly noble was to know when to toss and when to run. In the grand tapestry of the Middle Ages, where knights donned armor and ladies twirled in flowing gowns, one might not immediately consider the perils of the garderobe, the medieval toilet. Yet, for Sir Cedric the Clumsy, this humble chamber was the stage for an uproarious calamity. On a fateful day, after an ill-fated feast of questionable meats, Cedric found himself racing to the garderobe, only to stumble upon Brother Benedict, whose digestive woes were legendary, though not always amusing. As Cedric fumbled with a chamber pot, a commotion ensued. Lady Gertrude, the ever-curious noblewoman, burst through the door just as Cedric's clumsiness sent the pot tumbling, splattering its contents across the stone floor. The scene was one of chaos. Cedric blushing crimson, Benedict stifling laughter, and Gertrude's shrieks echoing through the halls. Amidst the laughter and mayhem, Cedric and Benedict discovered an unexpected camaraderie, united by their shared embarrassment. In a world where hygiene was a distant concept and waste was flung from windows with abandon, their misadventure served as a reminder. Sometimes, laughter is the best remedy for life's messiest moments. And so, as they cleaned up the remnants of their misfortune, the laughter echoed, turning an otherwise grim visit to the garderobe into a cherished memory that would bond the unlikely trio forever. A toss-up between convenience and chaos. In the medieval kingdom of Puddleton, where knights clanged their swords in battles of honor and maidens pirouetted in gowns that could easily catch fire, a different kind of warfare was engaged daily in the realm of waste disposal. Yes, dear reader, while gallant knights jousted on the field, the real conundrum lay behind the castle walls, specifically, in the garderobe. This was not just a fancy name for a closet. It was, in fact, the medieval equivalent of a toilet, which, conveniently enough, doubled as a wardrobe. One could only imagine the fashion faux pas that could ensue from a poorly timed trip to relieve oneself. Our story begins on a sunny afternoon, where Sir Reginald, a particularly nosy noble with an impressive mustache, was prancing about the courtyard, his eyes darting suspiciously at the castle's stone facade. He had a penchant for gossip and was particularly interested in the goings-on of Lady Marjorie, whose beauty was, unfortunately, rivaled only by her inability to keep her chamber pot in check. Meanwhile, in the castle's upper chambers, poor Squire Wilbur, a clumsy lad with all the grace of a drunken goose, was tasked with delivering a fresh chamber pot to Lady Marjorie. As he carried the pot, he stumbled over his own feet, sending the contents of the pot, let's just say a rather unpleasant stew, flying into the air. Timing, as they say, is everything, and alas, it was at that exact moment that Sir Reginald had chosen to glance up. The sight was one that would be forever etched into his memory. A flying cascade of unfortunate substances raining down upon him like a foul-smelling monsoon. By the Holy Grail! Sir Reginald exclaimed, his mustache drooping in despair. Is this how the fair lady shows her affections? Meanwhile, in the shadows of the garderobe, Brother Benedict, a monk with a rather tumultuous relationship with his digestion, was performing his own ritual of relief. The sound of his grumbling stomach could be heard echoing off the stone walls, providing a symphonic backdrop to the chaos outside. Oh, dear Lord! Why must my bowels betray me at such an inopportune hour? He muttered, clutching his stomach as he reached for the rough wood of the garderobe seat. The garderobe itself was a marvel of medieval engineering, or perhaps a testament to its utter lack of hygiene. It featured a hole that led directly into the castle moat below. As the waste tumbled into the water, it created an unsavory concoction that could only be described as a soup du moat. The noblemen and women of Puddleton would routinely toss their waste from their windows, a delightful game of chance where the goal was to avoid hitting unsuspecting passers-by. Reginald! Watch out! Shrieked Lady Marjorie from the window, having just spotted her beloved squire, who was still scrambling to retrieve the pot. Unfortunately, her warning came too late. The poor squire, in his frantic state, found himself right under the very window where Lady Marjorie was standing. As Sir Reginald brushed off the remnants of his unintentional shower, he turned to the maidens nearby and declared, "This is why we must build better toilets. Puddleton deserves better sanitation, and a better aim," quipped one of the ladies, stifling a laugh. Meanwhile, Brother Benedict, finally finished with his business, emerged from the garderobe, his brow glistening with sweat. "I see our sanitation practices are not quite up to par," he chuckled, eyeing the chaos around him. "Perhaps we should consider a new motto for the kingdom. Puddleton, where every drop counts." As the day wore on, the citizens of Puddleton continued their dance with destiny, one poorly placed chamber pot at a time. And so, while knights battled for glory, and ladies twirled in gowns, the real test of bravery took place in the castle's garderobe, where a little bit of waste could lead to a whole lot of chaos. And perhaps, just perhaps, a lesson in why tossing poop out the window was not just an act of convenience but also a chaotic gamble in the grand game of medieval life. In the bustling heart of the medieval castle, where the scent of fresh bread mingled awkwardly with the less than savory aromas wafting from the garderobe, Sir Cedric the Clumsy found himself in yet another pickle. It was a day like any other, marked by the usual chaos of noble life. But Cedric's stomach had other plans. As he rushed towards the dimly lit garderobe, an unfortunate collision with Brother Benedict sent chamber pots flying, their contents cascading down like a flagon of foul ale. "By the saints!" Brother Benedict exclaimed, his robes now a messy tapestry of yesterday's supper. The nearby Lady Gertrude, engrossed in an inspection of her prized pot, became the unwitting victim of this unfortunate ballet, her shrieks echoing through the stone corridors like a banshee's wail. As the noblewoman flailed, Cedric and the monk exchanged horrified glances, but instead of fleeing, they erupted into a raucous laughter that filled the garderobe. It dawned on them that while the medieval sanitation system was utterly lacking, public toilets were little more than holes over a communal pit. The ability to find humor in such disasters was a true testament to their humanity. In a world where privacy was a luxury few could afford, and the waste disposal was more akin to a game of dodgeball than a hygienic practice, Cedric learned that laughter could indeed be the best remedy. And so, amidst the chaos of chamber pots and the indignities of the garderobe, friendships were forged, and the spirit of camaraderie flourished. proving that even in the most embarrassing moments, joy could be found. The art of avoiding the stench. Public hygiene. The art of avoiding the stench. In the quaint yet chaotic kingdom of Puddleton, where the clang of swords mingled with the melodious sounds of maidens' laughter, there existed a realm far less glamorous than jousting tournaments and grand feasts. The medieval toilet. Here, the art of avoiding the stench became a daily battle, waged not with swords, but with the cunning knowledge of chamber pots, garderobes, and the occasional tumble of unfortunate nobles. It was a bright Tuesday morning when Sir Reginald, a knight of questionable bravery and even more questionable hygiene, found himself in dire need of relief. His stomach rumbled ominously, echoing the distant clanging of a nearby blacksmith. "By the gods," he muttered, "I fear my breakfast of pickled herring and day-old bread has conspired against me." With a determined stride, he made his way to the garderobe, a peculiar contraption that was little more than a wooden seat with a gaping hole, built precariously over a pit. Being a nobleman, Reginald was afforded the luxury of privacy, if one could call it that. It was a small stone chamber, but the door swung open with a creak that announced his arrival to the entire castle. As he settled down, an unwelcome interruption came in the form of Sir Cedric, a nosy noble with a penchant for gossip. "Reginald," he shouted, leaning far too close for comfort, "I just heard Lady Agnes say." "Good heavens, man, can't a knight have a moment of peace?" Reginald barked, the pressure of his predicament making him irritable. "Oh, come now. Everyone knows what you're doing. It's not as if it's a grand secret." Cedric persisted, oblivious to the fact that a noble should maintain decorum even in such matters. Meanwhile, in the courtyard below, young Squire Tomlin was busy trying to balance an overly full chamber pot. With the grace of a drunken goose, he stumbled on a wayward chicken, and the pot sailed from his hands, crashing at the feet of the bemused townsfolk. "Fear not, good people. It's merely a renovation," he stammered, blushing the shade of a ripe tomato. Back in the garderobe, the situation had escalated. Reginald's stomach churned violently as he attempted to focus on anything but the noxious odors wafting from the pit below. He could hear the distant sound of monks chanting, which only made him more anxious. Perhaps their prayers could somehow cleanse this foul chamber. Just then, a loud thud echoed as Cedric, in his relentless pursuit of gossip, accidentally knocked over a bucket of waste that had been precariously perched on the stairwell. "Reginald," Cedric shouted as he slipped, his arms flailing, "you may want to." But before he could finish, the bucket splashed its contents dramatically, creating a scene that would be remembered as the Great Stench of Puddleton. Reginald, in a panic, leapt from the garderobe, trousers around his ankles, only to join the chaos of Tomlin's mishap. "By the beard of Merlin," he shouted, as he and Cedric became unwitting participants in a medieval slapstick comedy, slipping and sliding through the muck. As the townsfolk erupted in laughter, a wise old monk named Brother Alaric, who had been quietly suffering from his own digestive dramas, surveyed the scene with a wry smile. "Ah, the joys of public hygiene," he mused, shaking his head. "Perhaps next time, the nobles will think twice before tossing their waste into the streets. Cleanliness is next to godliness, after all." The chaos of that fateful day spread like wildfire through Puddleton, teaching the townsfolk a valuable lesson. The art of avoiding the stench was not just about the act of disposal, but about the shared experience of humanity. Whether noble or squire, everyone was subject to the whims of their bowels. And so, the kingdom learned to embrace the humor in their messy lives, forever remembering the day when Sir Reginald and Squire Tomlin became the unwitting heroes of public hygiene. In the end, as laughter echoed through the streets, they understood that sometimes, the best way to avoid chaos was to simply let it happen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the bustling castle courtyard, Sir Cedric the Clumsy found himself in an all too familiar predicament. The noble knight, adorned in slightly tarnished armor, had just finished a grand feast that was, as always, followed by an unmistakable rumble in his belly. His mind raced with thoughts of the garderobe, an ancient structure where privacy was but a fleeting dream, and dignity was to be sacrificed at the altar of necessity. Little did he know, Brother Benedict, the resident monk known for his rather explosive digestive issues, was already in the midst of a battle of his own. As Cedric approached the door, he overheard the monk's frantic mutters, "Oh dear, not again." Just as Cedric pushed the door open, a chamber pot flew past him with a trajectory that would make any javelin thrower jealous. "Watch out!" yelled Brother Benedict, his face turning a shade of green that rivaled the finest peas. In a twist of fate, Lady Gertrude, a noblewoman with a penchant for dramatics, decided that this was the perfect time to empty her chamber pot from the window above. Cedric, caught between the door and the flying waste, made a heroic leap to the side, only to trip over his own feet and land squarely in the muck below. The scene was nothing short of chaos as the villagers erupted in laughter, while Cedric, now a walking testament to the perils of medieval sanitation, could only groan in exasperation. The unexpected hilarity of the situation brought everyone together, reminding them that even in the most dire of circumstances, like the lack of proper toilets in the Middle Ages, laughter was the best remedy. As Cedric wiped the remnants of his misadventure from his armor, he couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. In a world where chamber pots reigned supreme and garderobes were the norm, perhaps it was these very moments that made life in the Middle Ages so delightfully unpredictable. The noble, the squire, and the monk. In the quaint yet chaotic kingdom of Puddleton, where the clang of swords mingled with the melodious sounds of maidens' laughter, there existed a realm rife with peculiar customs. One such custom was the age-old practice of tossing waste out of windows, a tradition that would baffle the modern mind. As the sun rose over the cobbled streets, three quirky characters found themselves embroiled in this smelly saga. Sir Reginald, the nobleman with an overzealous sense of propriety, Squire Percival, his bumbling yet well-meaning assistant, and Brother Benedict, a monk whose digestive issues were the stuff of legend. On this fateful morning, Sir Reginald was preparing for a grand feast, and with it came the inevitable preparations that included not just the food but the rather pressing matter of his garderobe, the medieval toilet. It was a magnificent contraption, or so he liked to call it, a small wooden box with a hole perched perilously over a cesspit. Unfortunately, privacy was a luxury he could scarcely afford, and being a noble meant that his throne was in view of the bustling courtyard below. "Percival!" Sir Reginald bellowed, his voice echoing through the hall. "Fetch me the chamber pot. The time has come for my royal duties." Squire Percival, ever the clumsy one, rushed into the chamber with the pot, but in his haste, he tripped over a stray cat that had wandered in, sending the pot flying across the room. It landed with a resounding crash, sending its contents splattering against the walls. "By the heavens!" Sir Reginald exclaimed, recoiling at the sight. "Do you wish to ruin my reputation, man? Clean this at once." As Percival scrambled to gather the mess, Brother Benedict entered, looking ghostly pale. "I seek solace. The beans at breakfast have betrayed me," he gasped, clutching his stomach with the urgency of a man on the brink of war. "Not now, brother. Can't you see I'm in the midst of a crisis?" Sir Reginald snapped, his patience waning. But the monk was not to be deterred. "Alas! The only thing that can save me is that garderobe. I'm afraid my bowels have already decided to rebel." With a resigned sigh, Sir Reginald gestured toward the garderobe. "Very well, but be quick about it. The last thing I need is a mess to deal with." Brother Benedict dashed toward the toilet, only to find Percival still struggling with the spillage. "Out of my way, lad!" he cried, pushing past the squire. In his haste, he forgot to close the door behind him, leaving Sir Reginald exposed to the world. Outside, the townsfolk were already accustomed to the sounds of life in Puddleton, but nothing prepared them for the sight of a nobleman, pants around his ankles, shouting, "This is a travesty. A violation of noble etiquette." Meanwhile, Squire Percival had finally managed to get a grip on the situation, but as he turned to face the door, he found himself face to face with a group of curious villagers who had gathered to witness the commotion. Good day, fine citizens," he stammered, desperately trying to shield the nobleman with a large tapestry that had seen better days. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the air. It was Lady Arabella, the most eligible maiden in Puddleton, who had been strolling by just in time to witness the spectacle, forsooth. "What foul deed is this?" she cried, her eyes wide with horror and amusement. At that moment, Brother Benedict emerged from the garderobe, looking both relieved and horrified. "Fear not, good lady. I've come to cleanse this kingdom of its sins," he proclaimed, waving his arms dramatically, only to trip over Percival's discarded chamber pot and land unceremoniously in the muck. And so, the day in Puddleton spiraled into chaos, with laughter echoing through the streets as the nobleman, the squire, and the monk became unwitting stars of a most unexpected show. They learned that in the Middle Ages, the art of hygiene was less about cleanliness and more about survival, and that sometimes the best way to face life's messes was with a hearty laugh and a good sense of humor. After all, as the villagers often said, in Puddleton, it's not just the waste that stinks, it's the stories that come with it. In the heart of a bustling medieval village, the sun cast a warm glow over the thatched roofs, but little did the townsfolk know that a storm of hilarity was brewing within the walls of Castle Stinkbottom. Sir Cedric the Clumsy, renowned more for his misadventures than his knightly prowess, had just devoured a feast fit for a king. Alas, the robust roast boar had taken its toll, and his stomach grumbled ominously like a dragon ready to unleash chaos. Rushing to the garderobe, a rudimentary wooden loo with a gaping hole and no semblance of privacy, Cedric barreled in, only to collide with Brother Benedict, the monastery's resident monk, whose own digestive troubles were legendary. "Oh dear!" Cedric exclaimed, "I didn't see you there." Just as the two men awkwardly scrambled for position, a curious Lady Gertrude, always one to pry into matters that didn't concern her, peered in, clutching a chamber pot filled to the brim with what could only be described as the remnants of last night's dinner. In a twist of fate worthy of a jester's tale, the pot slipped from her hands, sending its contents cascading down upon the two unfortunate souls below. Gasps turned into shrieks of laughter from the onlookers outside, as Sir Cedric and Brother Benedict found themselves not only in a precarious situation but also united in a shared moment of utter disgrace. As they emerged, dripping but undeniably bonded by their shared ordeal, the crowd erupted in laughter. Cedric, ever the optimist despite his misfortune, declared, "At least we have a story to tell." And with that, the trio, now infamous throughout the castle, learned that sometimes, amidst the muck and mire of medieval life, laughter truly was the best remedy for their rather unrefined circumstances. When nature calls. In the quaint yet chaotic kingdom of Puddleton, where the clang of swords mingled with the melodious sounds of maidens' laughter, there existed a realm rife with peculiar customs. One such custom was the rather infamous practice of tossing the poop out the window. This peculiar habit, rooted in the medieval understanding of sanitation, or lack thereof, was not only a means of waste disposal but also a source of constant misunderstanding and, quite frankly, comedy. On a particularly sunny afternoon, Sir Reginald the Noble found himself in a rather compromising position. His chamber pot, a gleaming brass relic that had seen better days, was full to the brim. Despite his noble status, Sir Reginald had no private toilet facilities. Just a flimsy wooden door leading to a garderobe, a contraption that dangled precariously over the castle's outer wall. The nobleman knew he had to act quickly. After all, the last thing he wanted was to hold a council meeting while his stomach grumbled louder than a band of minstrels. Meanwhile, Sir Percival the squire, a gangly lad with a knack for tripping over his own feet, was scuttling around the castle, desperately searching for the chamber pot that had mysteriously vanished. It had been commandeered by Brother Ambrose, the local monk known for his unyielding devotion to both prayer and his digestive maladies. Brother Ambrose, in a moment of desperation, had taken the pot to the chapel, believing that a sanctified vessel might help alleviate his rather persistent troubles. As Sir Reginald made his way to the garderobe, he muttered under his breath about the state of affairs in Puddleton. "Why must we resort to such barbaric measures?" he lamented. "How am I to uphold the dignity of the crown when our sanitation is akin to that of a pigsty?" Just as he reached the edge of the garderobe, a sudden commotion erupted within the castle courtyard. Sir Percival, in his fervent quest for the elusive chamber pot, had collided with a group of ladies practicing their embroidery. The pot, a shiny beacon of hope, went flying through the air, performing a graceful pirouette before landing squarely in the lap of Lady Genevieve, the most esteemed noblewoman in the land. "What in the name of all that is holy?" Lady Genevieve exclaimed, her embroidery needle paused mid-stitch, eyes wide with disbelief. The other ladies gasped, and a chorus of muffled giggles erupted around them. Sir Percival, his face a shade of crimson deeper than the finest wine, stuttered, was simply trying to retrieve. "Retrieve what, good squire? A throne for our next royal gathering?" Lady Genevieve shot back, raising an eyebrow. Meanwhile, Sir Reginald, oblivious to the chaos below, had finally mustered the courage to use the garderobe. As he sat down, he heard a loud thud, the sound of Sir Percival's misadventure reaching its climax. In a moment of panic, he leaned back too far, sending his royal behind tumbling into the depths of the garderobe, narrowly avoiding a most undignified plunge into the moat below. "By the saints!" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the castle. "What manner of sorcery is this?" Just then, Brother Ambrose, clutching his own chamber pot, waddled into view, completely oblivious to the ruckus. "Ah, Sir Reginald. Have you come to join my humble prayers? I was just about to ask the heavens for some relief." He noticed the nobleman's predicament just in time to see him scrambling back inside, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. As the commotion reached its peak, the people of Puddleton began to gather, eager to witness the spectacle. It became the talk of the town. How a nobleman battled the perils of his own garderobe while a clumsy squire fought for a pot, and a monk sought divine intervention for his digestive woes. In the end, Sir Reginald emerged from the garderobe, dignity slightly tarnished but spirit intact. "Perhaps," he mused, "we should consider a more civilized approach to our sanitation. A throne with a door, perhaps?" The crowd erupted in laughter, and thus, the legend of the Puddleton poop tossing became a cherished tale, reminding all of the quirks of medieval life, and the importance of a good toilet. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the castle, Sir Cedric the Clumsy found himself in a rather precarious predicament. His stomach churned ominously, a consequence of last night's feast. A banquet fit for a king, but perhaps not for a knight with a sensitive constitution. Armed with nothing but a determined spirit and an old chamber pot, he made his way to the garderobe, the medieval throne that promised relief yet often delivered embarrassment. The garderobe, a charming little room perched above the castle walls, offered little in the way of privacy. As Cedric pushed open the creaking door, he was greeted by Brother Benedict, the resident monk whose notoriously troubled digestion had become the stuff of local legend. The monk, deep in contemplation or perhaps a state of digestive duress, didn't notice Cedric's entrance. "Good brother," Cedric exclaimed, only to trip over the hem of his trousers, sending the chamber pot flying through the air. Time seemed to slow as the pot arced gracefully, a shining beacon of misfortune, before landing squarely on Lady Gertrude, the ever-curious noblewoman who had chosen that very moment to inspect the garderobe. The scene erupted into chaos. A cacophony of gasps, laughter, and a few choice exclamations that would have made any noble blush. as Cedric scrambled to apologize. Fumbling over his words, Brother Benedict chuckled, his own troubles forgotten in the face of such absurdity. "Fear not, dear Cedric. It seems we've discovered a new method of waste disposal, straight to Lady Gertrude," he quipped, his laughter infectious. In that moment of hilarity, Cedric realized that amid the clumsy mishaps and the lack of sanitation, laughter was the true remedy for their medieval woes. After all, in a world where chamber pots ruled and privacy was a luxury, the ability to find humor in the most distasteful situations was perhaps the greatest blessing of all. Lessons learned from medieval waste management. Title: A Royal Flush. The Perils of Puddleton's Potty Practices. In the heart of Puddleton, where the sun cast playful shadows on cobblestone streets and the air was thick with the aroma of roasted meats and, dare I say, a hint of something less savory, our tale unfolds. It was a typical Tuesday, which in Puddleton meant two things: the annual cheese-rolling contest and the local noble, Lord Fiddlesticks, had decided it was the perfect day to inspect the castle's plumbing, or lack thereof. As the sun rose, illuminating the realm's quirks, young Squire Simon found himself in the most unfortunate of predicaments. His morning had started like any other, an awkward race to the garderobe, a medieval toilet that was less of a private sanctuary and more of a communal experience shared with the echoes of one's most intimate moments. Unfortunately, Simon had miscalculated the timing of his morning routine, and his stomach, a rebellious entity, had other plans. By the saints, I shall never eat another cheese wheel again, Simon muttered, clutching his chamber pot like a life raft, as he dashed toward the dreaded garderobe. The door creaked open to reveal a room where modesty went to die. A makeshift throne made of wood sat atop a dung-filled pit, with no door. Only a curtain that offered about as much privacy as a sieve. Just as Simon settled himself on the throne of shame, the curtain swished aside. In walked Lord Fiddlesticks, nose held high and a scroll in hand as if to inspect the noble's privy practices. "Ah, Squire Simon. Perfect timing. I was just about to review our waste disposal methods. Your lordship," Simon yelped, nearly toppling into the abyss below. "A little warning next time, perhaps?" The nobleman chuckled, oblivious to the squire's plight. "Waste not, want not, my boy. We must keep Puddleton pristine," Lord Fiddlesticks exclaimed, gesturing wildly, which, of course, led to an unfortunate flick of his wrist sending the scroll sailing into the pit. Simon's eyes widened in horror. "Your scroll?" he cried, but the nobleman merely shrugged. "Ah, a blessing in disguise. It was merely a list of complaints about the smell. Now, let us discuss our sanitation practices." Meanwhile, in the corner, Brother Benedict, the castle's monk with a penchant for spicy stews, gripped his belly in distress. "Good Lord! What have I done to deserve this?" he moaned, running in just as the squire was trying to extract himself from the throne. "Brother! Not now," Simon shouted, but it was too late. Benedict, in his haste to reach the toilet, slipped on a wayward chamber pot that had been left unattended, sending him sprawling right into the garderobe, his robes flapping like a distressed hen. "Holy moly!" Simon gasped, trying to pull the monk back. "You'll ruin the Lord's inspection." "Fear not, my son. It is only the natural order," Benedict proclaimed, his voice echoing in the chamber. "We are but humble servants of the Lord and his waste." At that moment, a commotion erupted outside. The townsfolk had gathered for the cheese-rolling contest, and their boisterous laughter filled the air. Someone had accidentally tossed a chamber pot out the window thinking it was a rival cheese. The contents, it appeared, were now raining down on the unsuspecting crowd below. "See, Squire Simon?" Lord Fiddlesticks pointed through the window with glee, completely ignoring the chaos. "A perfect example of our waste management success. We're contributing to the community." As the nobleman continued his lecture on the virtues of tossing waste out the window, Simon couldn't help but chuckle. You do realize that's not quite the message we want to send, right? With the stench rising and chaos ensuing, Simon learned a valuable lesson. In the Middle Ages, toilets were a communal affair, and privacy was a luxury few could afford. The art of waste disposal was not only about sanitation but also about camaraderie, albeit a rather pungent one. As the sun set over Puddleton, the townsfolk laughed, the nobleman debated sanitation, and Simon resignedly accepted his fate on the throne of hilarity. After all, in a kingdom where the motto was, "When nature calls, don't forget to answer," one could only embrace the absurdity of medieval life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the formidable walls of Stinkmore Castle, a peculiar commotion echoed through its halls. Sir Cedric the Clumsy, a knight renowned more for his mishaps than his valor, found himself in a rather precarious situation. The evening banquet had been lavish, with the finest meats and cheeses laid out before the noble guests. Yet, as the feasting continued, so did the toll on Cedric's stomach, which was now gurgling ominously, a clear warning that the time had come to visit the castle's infamous garderobe. Navigating the narrow, winding staircase, Cedric's clumsiness kicked in. His foot caught the hem of his own tunic, and he tumbled forward, his chamber pot clattering noisily against the stone floor. Meanwhile, Brother Benedict, a monk known for his devoutness and digestive troubles, was already ensconced in the garderobe, oblivious to the chaos outside. Unbeknownst to them, Lady Gertrude, a noblewoman with an insatiable curiosity and a penchant for eavesdropping, had taken a rather precarious position just outside the door, overhearing the two men's desperate discussions about the state of the castle's sanitation. In a twist of fate, as Cedric finally reached the garderobe, the door swung open with a resounding bang, sending him reeling backward and inadvertently launching the chamber pot high into the air. Time seemed to freeze as the contents of the pot cascaded in a most unfortunate arc, landing squarely on Lady Gertrude, who had just been leaning in to catch the latest gossip. Shock and horror filled the air, followed by a burst of uncontrollable laughter from the onlookers gathered nearby. As the noblewoman sputtered in disbelief, Cedric stood frozen, his face a portrait of embarrassment. Brother Benedict, peering out from the shadows, could only chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. "Well, my good knight, it appears you've provided a new definition to taking a dump," he quipped, his laughter echoing off the stone walls. In that moment, the castle's inhabitants learned a valuable lesson. In an age where privacy was a luxury and hygiene was a novel concept, laughter was the best remedy for even the most unfortunate of mishaps. Amidst the chaos, friendships were forged, and the bonds of community strengthened, proving that even in the most unsanitary of circumstances, joy could find a way to flourish. As Cedric mopped his brow and helped Lady Gertrude to her feet, the laughter continued to ripple through the halls of Stinkmore Castle, echoing into the night as a reminder of the hilarity that life, even in the Middle Ages, could bring.